They say when a griot from a village dies, who holds all of the stories of that village, it's relative to a library burning down.
Yes.
In Mel's passing and learning of it, it felt as if it was an entire educational institution had burned to the ground. But it hadn't fully. Because when you look around you, people that are on all sides of the law, from lawyers, to folks that have been wrongly convicted, to elected officials,
Listen.
to people that have pulled up to elected officials' houses, to people in suits, to people in street clothes, to people from Africa, to people that are Caucasian, to all gradients of skin tones, to people that fight for economic justice, to people that fight for racial justice, to people that fight for social justice, to people that just fight for justice.
That part.
You're all in this room because you knew Mel, and he probably gave you a phone call at one point. And I'll say that again. You knew Mel, and he probably gave you a phone call at one point. And even if he didn't give you a phone call, there was that one point where he looked you dead in your eye. And maybe you might have had it out with him a few times, but that was because he stood his ground. Sometimes you only have it out with somebody one time, and you part ways. But Mel always came back to the conversation. He always came back to the square. He always came back to the march. And even if you didn't know he was there, and you forgot to invite him, pull up and materialize out of some side of the sound truck, yank on your coat and say, "You got to tell me about this thing."
Yeah, that's him. That's him. Listen.
And in an action that was put together in less than 12 hours. Less than 12 hours. You just got to trust that Mel's going to be there.
Yeah.
And that he's probably going to have it out with you for not formally inviting you.
Yes.
And although you didn't have to formally invite Mel, there was always a place at the table for Mel.
Yes.
And although I said in the beginning it may have seemed that an institution had burned down, it hasn't quite fully, because all of you have a piece of Mel. Everybody has a piece of Mel. Everybody learns something from Mel. Everybody knows something from Mel. And everybody's been inspired by Mel in one way or in many others. And so it is incumbent upon everybody in this room, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, or whether you feel it or not, to carry his legacy.
That's right.
There are students in this room that fought against teachers saying the N-word in their high schools. There are lawyers in this room that may not have fully understood the law until they met Mel. There are parents in this room that never knew they were going to lose, that thought that they were in the fight alone until they met Mel. There are people in this city that felt that they were alone until they heard Mel speak. And there's one call that he did, and it was during the conviction of Derek Chauvin. And Brandon had said a few of them. And he said something during that time with a megaphone amongst a sea of people. And I never heard him say this one again. And he said, "This isn't the last victory. But this is whose victory? Our victory."
Yes.
Whose victory?
Our victory.
Whose victory?
Our victory.
Whose victory?
Our victory.
And it's incumbent upon everybody in this room to carry that same spirit, that same energy, and that same soul that Mel brought to every single action. And I know it is surreal right now to see this.
Yes.
And to see this right here, knowing that you talked to him less than 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I carry that feeling. I know that it's surreal.
Yes.
And I'll wrap up on the pure fact that when he called me, and you could hear it in his voice, that his body was subdued. And all he wanted to say was that, "I'm sorry I can't be there for the family."
Yes. Speak.
And the only thing that could hold that brother back was a hospital bed.
That part.
It was
Yes.
single digits outside. And it was going to be the second action for justice for Dante Wright. And the only thing that could hold him back was a hospital bed. He was one of the baddest dudes I had ever met in my life.
Yes. Yes.
Rest in power, Mel Reese.
That's right.